All right. Can everyone hear me? Testing, testing. Hi, welcome to Planning Commission on this lovely rainy day on April 2nd, 2026. Call the meeting to order. And who's driving today? Is it who? I don't know. We'll move into item two. We'll move into item two, and I'm not sure who's presenting to us. Hey.
Got a couple handheld mics to pass around if needed.
Yeah, we have the special honor of having some of our planning here. Has anybody here heard of? That's kind of what inspired the Genesis system. Okay. So these guys are awesome, and Dave over here, he reached out to, hey, planning project, Lehi, and options. I didn't want to. They agreed, so I could tell. It's pretty good, but it's an awesome work. Quite some time. Yeah, they're going to present to us and let us know about. If you guys want to introduce yourself, and then you can.
We are the BYU group. I'm Grace Gibson. And I'm Kezia Tripp. I'm a civil engineering master student.
Marcus Fisher.
And I'm Erin Christensen, also a civil engineering master student.
So this is just, did you want to? Okay, great. This is just a little overview of what we've been working on. We've been working to model future growth using different land uses. We're wanting to estimate build out capacity under different development patterns and how those different development patterns might change fiscal impact. So how the revenue and expenditures are going to fluctuate as those development patterns change, and then just be able to put this all into a report that we're writing, and we'll have to Mike in a couple of weeks. So if you're interested in that, he can probably pass that along, and it's just going to help identify trade-offs in different development patterns and how that can inform planning decisions. Yeah. And then this is just a brief community overview to kind of help you gauge where we're coming from that's been informing our decision-making process, knowing that Lehi is growing so fast and that this growth trajectory is expected to continue going into 2050, which is the year where we are kind of gauging our scenarios at. Yeah. And then for our model assumptions, we are using a program called Community Viz, which is just an add-on into ArcGIS. And that's what we've been using. And so these are kind of the assumptions that we've been putting into our model.
Okay. So as far as land uses go, we did decide to consolidate some of the different land use types in the general plan. And we focused mostly on commercial, residential, and then open spaces because they have different revenue and expenditures based on each of the land use types. And then we also decided to separate the commercial and then the retail commercial because of sales tax. As far as residential land uses go, there's 5 that are on the general plan, but we decided to break them into 3 different categories so that it could be more understandable: high, medium, and low density residential. As you can see on this chart, the high density has 12 units per acre, and medium density has 5 units per acre, and then low density has 2 units per acre. As the density decreases, the square foot per unit increases, and the value per unit also increases.
So then with mixed use and transit oriented development, we chose different splits for land uses. So in mixed use, 75% residential and 25% retail. And within transit oriented developments, 50% residential, 25% commercial, 20% retail, and 5% open space or parks.
Yeah, and most of our assumptions were gathered from either a little bit of research that we've done or from what we've seen kind of in Lehi that to be typical. And then our kind of next list of assumptions, which is also not exhaustive of all the assumptions that we've made. Those will all be in the report. I'm sure we could provide you with a list if you're interested. But so we've got like our property tax using the portion of the property tax rate that kind of comes to like Lehi city level as opposed to the state level. And then the sales tax, a lot of these were calculated using the fiscal 2026 fiscal year budget and then divided by whatever units that we had access to. So for sales tax, the total amount of anticipated revenue for 2026 from sales tax divided by the number of square feet of retail buildings that are currently in use. And then for expenditures, once again, using that budget and the expenses related to police and fire divided by an assumed kind of 30,000 existing housing units in Lehi, and a road cost per lane mile that was provided by the city, as well as a parks cost that was calculated from the budget divided by the assumed kind of 268 acres of parks that presumably exist currently in Lehi, utility cost that was used by totaling the linear feet of the culinary irrigation, sewer, and storm utilities on GIS and dividing that from the budget once again, and then public facilities being kind of a flat rate of things like the library and other facilities that we assumed would be kind of collective. And then a couple of formulas that we used in our model, which are mostly just taking so we started for the most part with parcels and the general plan GIS map, which gives us stuff in acres. And so just moving that kind of into dollars. A couple of those ideas, for example, with our property revenues, kind of from property taxes, acres to then square feet, which is 43,560 is that conversion. And then the floor area ratio to identify how much of that is the building times the valuation sort of parameter of like $200 per square foot. And then times the property tax, and then proportion of whether it's retail or commercial, and then times 14% to represent what Lehi gets total out of the property tax.
So these are some of our preliminary results. We have been learning how to use this software. So a lot of this isn't 100% accurate yet. We've been getting a lot closer. Our first results were like crazy numbers that were like, that can't be right. But as we can see from our base scenario versus our build out scenario, obviously when things are built out, there's going to be more commercial retail to get more revenue. But within our totaling to revenue minus expenditures, we've been comparing it to the 2026 budget, and we've gotten down to 2 million, almost 3 million. Make net profit, I guess, which obviously that should net zero, but that shows that our model is in the right direction. And so it is able to compare what we have modeled from our base scenario to our build out. And it is worth noting that our build out is full build out. So with our residential assumption of 12 housing units per acre, all of the housing that is zoned as high density residential is 12 units per acre. And so that is a consideration that these assumptions it is fully built out. So yeah.
Great. And then these are the three main points we're going to be working on in our final report, but just kind of a overview of what we're going to be looking at and analyzing is the projected long-term fiscal sustainability of this full build-out scenario, budget flexibility, depending on how that scenario changes and what development patterns we end up going with in different scenarios, and then just commercial properties and how that might impact the budget, fiscal sustainability, as commercial percentages might go up or down depending on the scenarios. So speaking of future scenarios that might be, we've been in discussion about what might be most useful to you, and this is kind of the feedback we were hoping to hear about what kind of scenarios feel like they are going to be of the most interest and use to you. But we were discussing maybe a medium build out, low build out, a build out with different TOD splits, a scenario with more commercial, a scenario with more mixed use, more TOD, and what kind of numbers you might be looking for in those TODs, mixed uses. Great, thank you.
So yeah, I don't know if you guys have feedback on what kind of models would be useful, what kind of things you would hope to get out of this project as we are concluding with our final remarks and creating other models.
Question. For your build out and your modeling, are you considering office as commercial? Okay, and are you planning to split those in retail and office? It sounded like you were.
Yeah, so under commercial, it's all like zoned as commercial, and we decided about 20% of the commercial was considered retail based on that's the current proportion of retail within the commercial in Lehi, so we maintained that. So Commercial, we probably should use another word, but if it's called commercial, then it's just like office space. The point being there's no sales tax revenue. And then retail was technically a subsection of commercial, but the parts of it that provide sales tax revenue.
No, Ken, no.
My go-to team. Okay. You're on here. Okay. Yeah, yet again, I'm in on a day Katie's out, so I can cover for Katie. But I was tasked. I'm Caden Peterson, by the way. I know I've met most of you guys from the last time I covered a planning commission, but I've been tasked with mapping out most of the pylon signs in Lehi and pretty much giving context to the discussion that we'll have later. Fiery discussion, I'm sure, on pylon signs. But anyway, so first of all, just to review real quick, just want to get some definitions straight on what a pylon sign is. As far as the code is concerned, it's pretty much any freestanding sign above 14 feet. And it usually includes an elevated sign cabinet that's over 6 feet. And its main purpose is visibility from arterial roads, and the standard limit is 25 feet and 200 square feet per sign face. Some other requirements for pylon signs, just to review, I'm sure you guys know most of the stuff, but one pylon sign is allowed per arterial or collector street frontage on commercial lots of 3 acres or larger. But if the lot is less than 3 acres, one pylon sign can still be granted if the lot is within 300 feet of I-15 or within 1,000 feet of an I-15 interchange. If the sign is oriented for freeway viewing, which most are, the sign is owned by a hotel, gas station, or restaurant, or if the commercial lot has more than 300 feet of street frontage. Another important aspect of pylon sign is aesthetics. And the main thing is that it must be architecturally compatible with the development in the area. And an electronic display can only use up to 50% of sign area, as well as pole covers, as you can see here on the right-hand side. JCW's and Hampton Inn sign. That's more of the old school single pole, probably in 90s or so, 80s or 90s would be my guess. And then on the left, you can see the outlet sign. It's more of the standard, more structural integrity looking, at least. And as far as the, yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah, I believe any arterial road is open to, yeah, I can double check with Kim, but that would be my guess, but. Yeah. 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 I know. Thing over here. Um, However, there are exceptions to the um, main pylon sign rules, as we know, and about half of the signs from what I studied has been granted exceptions and are over 25 feet. And this includes, like Mike said, businesses next to structures that are blocking visibility of a sign, lots within 300 feet of I-15 or 1,000 feet of an I-15 interchange. And this has an absolute max height of 70 feet in this case, and a sign base max of 600 feet. However, as you guys know, there's some special exceptions to the 70 feet. Rule or code, as multi-tenant retail centers can apply for more sides up to planning commission's discretion. And as with all pylon signs, they will all have to go through planning commission to determine additional height beyond 25, beyond 70. In this case, the outlet sign is 100 feet tall. Okay, just to give you guys some perspective on sign situation right now in Lehi. You can see down here in the red circle, I'll show you a few signs in a sec, but you can see a lot of individual signs kind of bunched up together, middle area, and I'm sure when you go down I-15, you can see a bunch of old school pole signs in this area. I can't unsee it now driving through, just the sheer quantity of shish kebabs, as Mike says, driving through this area. And to give you a little perspective, most are between 60 and 75 feet as far as these pole signs go, including McDonald's and this Wendy's sign. A lot don't have as much city records, so had to dive pretty deep into some handwritten engineering notes and stuff like that with Noreen's help, which was interesting. But yeah, just to give you guys a little bit of perspective, that's kind of what we're looking at down there. Looking to the other side, you also have Chuckarama at 65, Holiday at 60. Looking up towards Traverse Mountain area and including the 2100 and SR92 intersections, most of the signs up there are more updated and more multi-tenant focused, less of the pole shish kebab type sign. And see more things like this sign, 60 feet tall with a ridge. This is at the corner of Digital Drive and SR92. And this Lone Peak sign just north of Zupa's is 70 feet tall, and it includes more multi-tenant options. Another important note to mention is, I guess this would be a good example of including the architectural features and including making it cohesive with the site. That was a big thing with the outlet sign, has to be consistent with the rest of the site in order for it to get planning commission approval. And of course, everything will go through you guys. But yeah, any further questions? Any specific signs you want me to look up? Yeah, yeah, it's the biggest one.
Background of where we're at here.
It's just interesting. Our code puts a limit of 25 feet, but then it says specifically in the code that we can go up to 75 feet. So everybody that comes in asks for 75 feet.
Yeah.
They all do, right? They all come in and they say, oh, we need 75 feet. Where did we pull that up to 75-foot number out? Why is that in our code?
What I don't know the history exactly, but what I understand is I-15, those pole signs were in before there was much, I mean, not that the code's extremely robust now, but before there was definite rules, it seemed like those kind of set the standard for what we have now. And those were around 60 to 70 feet. So I believe I'd assume that's where the number came from, Kim. Something like that, but mostly in response to I-15, from what I understand. But that's what I did find interesting is that you have a lot max at 25, but over 50% have gotten exceptions to 25 feet, which is kind of surprising to me. But
Have you done any comparisons with other cities that are about our size?
yeah, I've looked at a few in American Fork, and they have a similar in their older area along I-15, as they don't have as long of a stretch as Lehi does. Be similar to the old pole signs and a lot of the kind of like the Chuckarama and Hampton Inn type sign. From what I
Do
can
they
tell.
have, they have any outliers like the outlet sign that's just
I don't believe
enormous?
so. I don't believe so.
Is that the biggest sign
It
south
was-
of,
I-
maybe west of the Mississippi?
Yeah, maybe not in Vegas though, but
I know we talked about the monopole as kind of antiquated, kind of an older design. I agree that it is an older design. It's something we've seen for decades. However, it is less offensive, right, to the environment because you can't put as big of a sign on it as far as square footage of the frontage of the sign for the face. And it's kind of like that catch-22 where people come in and with the cell phone towers or things like that say, oh, let's turn it into a tree or turn it into something else for stealth. And then it just makes it more of an eyesore when a monopole with a cell phone tower on top of it almost disappears into your mind, right? Because anyway, so yes, I see these newer signs. There's more engineering that goes into them and they are prettier per se, but they cover up more square footage. They block the views of the natural beauty that we have around us. Did you know that I don't like signs?
oh yeah, of course.
I just,
Oh, square footage of signs. Like I said, usually it's 200 feet, but as you guys sure know, it's usually ask for more if they are going above 25 feet because, as you said, you kind of want to max it out for advertising and have scale. As Kim says, a lot of the older signs don't have much data on square feet, like that McDonald's sign. Can't get anything on the McDonald's sign or the old KFC sign, and that's more of a 3D sign. But yeah, I believe the Traverse is also stretching that and definitely above the 600 as well. And that was kind of like a exception in the code to give planning commission some leeway in that sense as far as multi-tenant goes. And kind of what you're saying, Tyson, it seems like it's kind of a catch-22 for the trade-off. It seems like they come in and say, listen, we have this sign, but it's going to cover multiple tenants, and that will be the main thing. And I guess that's the difference between Main Street and Traverse Mountain right now. It's less signs, more tenants, but bigger signs, opposed to single monopole, more monopoles. But
Force the signs.
yeah, yeah, it definitely does block that view of 10th coming down I-15 for sure.
go ahead.
Well, we take this into, I mean, the statistics are valuable to inform the conversation. I'd love for us to get more into the actual regulation piece. In my years on the commission, it has been my impression that we do not have good justifications for what our what our regulations are. They feel very arbitrary. Now, that is not, while I do not, I mean, no one can achieve the great loathing for science that Tyson has. It's a singular accomplishment. We respect and appreciate him for that commitment to such loathing. It's admirable. Nonetheless, I take the man's point, right? Now, science can, in fact, also be an absolute work of art. I am not aware of any in the city of Lehi, to be frank. To be fair, my background, when I was young, I worked for YESCO, Young Electric Sign Company. I have seen signs that truly are just, they're majestic. And I'm not aware of any in the city of Lehi, with zero offense to our current signs. But all that said, there's never been a real in-depth explanation as to why we're capping at what feet. There's been a few nods at times about, well, moving at certain miles per hour, being able to see it. Okay, but I have not heard anyone, and this isn't I'm not trying to throw barbs at be it staff, other commissioners, whatever. I don't have the answers, but I would like to know, where are we getting these numbers from? Why should we cap it at X? What should we be considering if we're looking at giving some sort of allowance or making an exception? It feels like people come in and we do cave pretty quickly, in part because we don't have a good justification for why we had the rules in the first place. So it's kind of hard to then say, but you really need to stick by this because we can't defend it. So that's where I'd like to take things.
Yeah, totally. And sorry, I don't want to sound like or anything like that. We're definitely not. But yeah, after reading through a lot of the minute planning commission report like that, back from like 10, 20, 2000s, a lot of times plan would come in and same thing where they'd come in, planning commission say, no way, happening, come back 2 months later, maybe planning commission members have changed, goes right through. So it's
Sure.
kind of,
And they didn't even
Yeah.
change the sign, right?
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
same signs, same size and everything. I hear you on that.
I kind of feel like we should be getting away from the tall signs, because if I'm traveling, if I'm in an unfamiliar city, I'm Google mapping it.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
important.
just gonna go back on the freeway and look around for the sign to, a grocery store or a McDonald's. I might see McDonald's and just because that's so familiar. But should we be considering what the world is like now versus 2003 or whatever, when we needed to be able to see, should I get off now? Because people are, if they need it, they're going to punch it into their phone and find it.
Yeah, totally. I guess a lot of times these seem to be competing with signs already in place that can't come down. Well, as billboards.
But if I'm a small business owner, I'm going to remind you that people aren't maybe thinking that they want to eat at McDonald's, but they see those golden arches every day. And now they're thinking, I want McDonald's tonight, because they saw it on Tuesday and they saw it on Sunday. And that's an important part of their advertising. So not taken away from your point, but I just think that would get countered quickly by pretty much any business would want to push back on that. Doesn't mean there's no validity, but there's no side to that coin. That's all. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
In an ideal world, no signs at all. Landscape would be great for me. Yeah.
I was just gonna say to kind of your earlier thing, like the 70-foot limitation, what's the, reasoning behind that? I don't know unless Kim knows something different, I don't know if there's any strong reasoning as to why that was set.
That was my
So
impression.
it's probably a little bit arbitrary. The only thing I would say is zoning standards, as long as they don't infringe on the fundamental rights, they have to just be based on a rational basis test. So creating a policy or something like the council, they have to say, but look, we're making this policy because it's doing this. And as long as it's rational sense, you can typically uphold the zoning standard in court or whatever happens if it gets challenged. Like for the signage, I think the I mean, it's all over the place. But in the past, then we want to minimize signage and the visual clutter it makes, especially with our view of our mountains. The idea is we're going to cap the sign height at 25 and you can go higher. The applicants should provide good justification based on, look, we got a freeway overpass. We just want a certain amount of visibility. The idea is, you minimize the sign height, you only bring it up to the height that you still get that visibility that you're looking for, that a business would want on a highway. There was one time, Kim and I were at a conference down in Atlanta and we're driving on one of the freeways right out of the town. Those darn signs were so tall, you have to like look out your window like this. I'm like, why are they so tall? And I don't know, if you go too tall, it actually might even be harder to see than as close to reasonable eye level as possible. So anyway, just a little.
I appreciate that. And Mike, while defending defending the code on the basis of it's not insane, right? It's rational. I can understand that that might be legally justifiable. But what I'm saying is if we're going to have a conversation about what our regulations are, let's not do what happens to be rationally justifiable. Let's do what's optimal. We do sound studies, parking studies. There is a study for everything. I can't imagine that there aren't means, and I say this not as a professional staffer, right? So I could be wrong here. I just can't fathom that there aren't a number of studies already done or that we aren't capable of doing one that would really give us a good indicator that, you know what, 75 isn't actually the magic ticket. At 60, there's no need to go higher. People are going to see what they need, and we're seeing more of the mountains. It is scientifically proven that those other 15 feet do nothing. We should now lower the standard and hold to it. Or, is it even the inverse? Are we genuinely somehow costing Lehi businesses 5% of what they would otherwise be earning per year because our signs are 5 feet too low? I mean, am I making some sense here?
I was gonna say, that makes total sense. And I'm not saying that we should just make code willy-nilly just
And
because.
I didn't, I feared it might come that way. I
No,
don't mean
no,
that. But,
no.
there's a big difference between this is rational and this is,
Yeah.
I've studied it and this is the right number. And I would just prefer we're in that camp, that second camp.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and we would want to, and I can't say we've done that kind of research on this yet or other cities. I would-
Why don't we do that and then let's amend code accordingly? That to me is the thing to do.
Yeah. Ultimately, it'll be kind of your position as planning commission, the council, the policy makers to say what they feel the important thing here. Is it more on the side of business? Is it more on the side of observing the views? And that will be up to them. But I do think it would be nice to understand here's some standard practice for visibility of signs and at least have that to stuff.
Sure that this is included, say, studies, thank you, studies revolving signs of sign. I'm also thinking there's got to be a study out there that tracks the actual
Yeah.
of signs based off of how fast.
Yeah.
So I mean, taking all that into account, I'm sure there's studies out there that we could be able to tap into.
I have heard reference to some of those because some of the good sign companies that came for some of those previous signs said, hey, at this speed on the freeway and this height, this is the size we need. So there is some calculation.
And at the same time, as much as, I worked in an industry, the last person I want to get all my info from is my former employer, right? Come on. But yeah, they came in the right way, right? And as we're thinking of the same moment, we granted an exception on that pylon that you're talking about. It was on Timpanogos Highway, right? Yeah, and because they came with science, and we were sitting there going, it's rational, but you can't argue when you haven't done the homework that they have. And I feel like that is the thing we see over and over again. I don't like telling a business that they can't do what they want to do with their sign when I don't have a legitimate reason for it. And at the same time, I'm not interested in cluttering up the city. Right? I want to know that I'm making these decisions with really meaningful information, not shooting from the hip.
Love to see.
Yeah.
Do. Because, I mean, of this, we've got 28 are below 25 feet below, 32 are above. 32 need an exception, just of those, exception based off of footage. And how many of those 25 footers need an exception
Yeah.
based off square?
Yeah, let me, I've. So,
Ken and Polo, we're seeing your comments. Thank you. Appreciate, I was wondering what some of you guys were thinking.
but it puts some square foot as I mentioned, like a lot of older signs.
Holy, which sign is that? That's the big one. Yeah. I've been it 4 times.
And yes, I know I have some strong opinions about these, and I acknowledge they are opinions. They are, I'm not saying that our code is broken, although I kind of am. But I wish that our sign ordinance was more around wayfaring, helping people find their way at a human scale rather than geared towards traffic. Like like our commissioner said, most people are using some type of a assistance to get to where they're going, right? I do understand the golden arches as the example as well. You know, you see that out of the corner of your eye. 3 days from now, you're like, oh, I want that. I get that. And I know that businesses have a right to advertise or to like, display where they are, right? I think that we, over the decades, have lost sight that that was crucial at one point for a business to succeed. I feel like that critical nature of that level of advertising has diminished with technology, with other resources. And I feel like our code could probably use a update to reflect that as well. Not to eliminate their opportunity to sell or to advertise where they are, but I would want to see it geared more towards a human scale rather than that flyby scale. And that those are again my opinions on this. So I do appreciate all the work that you put into this though. It is very interesting. Data wise and every time these come up I hold my breath because we don't have a good reason to say no other than I hate it, right? And
That doesn't go over well on the record, right?
right. I think of the EV Auto sign, which I don't know if it was on here, was it? EV Auto?
Yeah, it should be.
Speaking of works of art, I appreciate that that one is something other than just a pole with a sign on it, right?
Right, right.
It looks like something,
It does, it does. You know what? Yeah, I'll give halfway on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
It is right by. It is hard to see. Yeah.
I think that's why you gave that exception for the 40 feet.
right.
Yeah, I know, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
And we had long conversations about how it illuminated, the angle, the neighbors.
yeah. And I know that one went back and forth. I think
Mhm.
part of the illumination got denied and then they had to come back and there was an appeal, but you guys were okay with the height for the reasons that they gave.
Yeah.
It's okay if I had
That
a-
was a well-discussed
Yeah.
and, sorry. Jake,
No,
you
you're
were gonna
okay.
talk over you.
I was gonna say to Tyson's point, a lot of policies sometimes are somewhat opinion based when you think about it, because you just, city council members and planning commissioners decide, what do we want Lehigh to be in the future? That's what a lot of our design codes are. It's like, what are trying to be more of a walkable city or more of a car city, and stuff like this kind of adds up to that whole big picture. So there is some, if it's important that we want to make sure people can see signs from cars on the freeway, then make sure it's visible, legible and everything, but that's not important to the policies of the city, then that's a different story. So
A lot of my opinions on this stem from a time that I spent in Rio de Janeiro. In Rio de Janeiro, there was an enormous amount of signage, not just billboards and things, but they were signs that were bolted to the sides of buildings that covered up windows and made the buildings look terrible. And while I was there, I spent a year away from the city and came back to it. And during that time, they passed an ordinance through the city that forced them to not just stop building signs, but to remove the signage that was on. And it was a night and day difference of how much more beautiful the city became because they stopped covering it up with trash, right? With this advertisement that was just noise and it took away from the beauty of the area. Now, there are still signs in that city, right? There are still signs, but they are scaled down at a human level. They are no longer on the top of these high-rise buildings that are covering the entire city. And it did make an impact on my impression of how needed is this noise that we're putting in our city and what it distracts from what we have around us that is so beautiful. People come from around the country that drive through this corridor of I-15 and their mouths hit the floor because they see these things that they don't see everywhere in the country. We have something amazing and I hate that we cover it up. I hate it for our people. I hate it for our visitors. I wish that we were more protective of the visual sight lines of what we have naturally around us. That is all.
Tyson, I'm glad to know your origin story. Now,
Brazil. Is it okay if I jump in with something? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would also agree with you. Our sign chapter is in desperate need of an update. The sign companies tell us that, you tell us that, the city council tells us that, pretty much everyone tells us that. So we are working on some changes in it. In addition to what you've been telling us, I think a lot of this actually ties back to the conditional use issue that we've had in the past. I think Caden mentioned this. All pylon signs right now are conditional uses. You can meet the 25-foot height requirement, the square footage requirement, and you still have to go to planning commission. One of the things we are wanting to update with the comprehensive change is if you meet that 25-foot height requirement, the square footage, then it just becomes a staff approval item. There's that incentive to keep it smaller, not ask for exceptions, not ask for more electronic display. And I think that might result in starting to lower and getting less of those requests at planning commission. Because I think, I mean, if you're going to have to go to planning commission anyways, why not go bigger, right? Shoot for the star or shoot for the moon and hit the stars, right? So I think that's something that's on our radar. We're working on it, but there's also so many other things in the chapter that are outdated and need to be updated. So
okay, but I'm going to lovingly
and we could
swing a 2x4 here and just say,
hit me with it.
study.
Yeah.
We need real data.
With
I
numbers.
want that to
Yeah.
make decisions. I understand and appreciate aesthetic.
Yeah.
I value aesthetic. I still remember my favorite sign when I worked at Yesco, and it was this gorgeous. It was Ghirardelli's Chocolate in San Diego. You ever been there?
Been there.
Yeah,
Not to that one.
Man, the marquee sign was it was absolute, just Art Nouveau, neon, tasteful in colors, everything. Yeah, that was art masquerading as a sign. But my beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and you can't make policy off of that basis. So we really do need a study that can dial us in making. I think you're already onto a great start with keep it under 25. You don't have to talk to us.
Yeah. But I think, and it's interesting if you look at our sign code now under what's permitted uses, what's conditional uses, marquees, it's a conditional use. Should they be a conditional use if we have guidelines that are in place to help with the heights and the sizes? Probably not, right?
Right.
You meet the code, you get approved. You're not asking for exceptions, but I think you know,
And
and
so
we
and
probably
so
should
we
do some more.
decentivize people
Yeah.
making those sorts of signs because
Yeah.
they know they
And
got to deal
I
with
do
it.
agree. I think some studies and some research should be done into, okay, are these numbers in the right direction? You know, is there studies that show that this is what we want? But I do think then holding to that, incentivizing, not asking for the exception will
Mhm.
get better signs, right?
Yeah.
Shorter signs, other things.
Also, I think we will have a greater incentive.
Yeah.
At this point, I think the commission, I'm just thinking out loud here, but I think we feel like the lax parent who's just caved so many times to the
Yeah.
spoiled kid, we're just like, oh gosh, whatever, fine.
Yeah.
You know, when signs come in, it's the same rigmarole where we don't really have good reason.
Yeah.
If they give a decent answer, we feel both in terms of, you know,
Yeah.
consistency. What have we done with previous applicants? And a lack of real explanation as to
Yeah.
why our rule's even there in the first place, that we cave. I want a rule that I feel I can enforce and that I know is in the best interest
Yeah.
of the city.
I think
not
the other
arbitrary.
nice thing will be if we change it from this conditional use situation to an exception. Craig, if he was here, would give you the whole monologue about how it's conditional use, you have to approve it unless there's, you know, all the things about why you can't, if there's studies or why you could deny it. If it's just an exception, then it gives you more, I think, flexibility in this situation. So
Yeah.
I do think that's a big reason why we need to shore it up. Sure. So that was something we're looking at. And we could do it in a small chunk and just start pushing that through, or we could do the whole thing in one big swoop. That's kind of what we're trying to figure out.
To your point as well. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Ken.
Ken's question, how did the city come up with the current sign code? Oh, yeah, we super talked about that. Come on, Ken, keep up. Keep up. We love you, Ken. Yes.
Say to your point, Greg, though, I think it would be good just to at least have that research as a baseline, like
Yeah.
there's visibility speeds, you know, what does that even recommend? Because we already allow much higher than what that even would recommend, because that would be a basis of saying we don't.
Well, so I mean, I think that's it. Like, that's the next step. Let's
that
get a
kinda
study and let's have this conversation again.
Be a basis for discussion, and
Yeah.
there's always the on policy.
I would even say, get the study, put together, your suggested amendment to the code on that basis, and let's just dive right in. At that point, we can make some suggested alterations and let's send that on to council.
Means, Ken, you got some work to do if you want to help them. No, just kidding.
Okay.
Kenneth Roberts is typing.
Oh, I know he is. I'm looking forward to it. So I mean, here's that.
I was gonna say, I assume it
You're
was
not
probably
looking at-
based off of planning best practices from around the country, but I wasn't here back in the. good old days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by
no,
planning best practices, I mean other cities' code, right?
Yeah.
Which again, you could trace that back to was lobbying for what? So,
No, I get the impression it was very much shooting from the hip. I mean, well intended, but well, and look, I understand the shoot from the hip 100 years ago, 50 years ago, even into the, to the 90s, but we're past that. It is. So let's data this up. All right. Anything else?
No. Thank you. Are you done? Sorry. I didn't, if you're not done, I'd love to hear more. Thank you.
I was gonna say thanks for all your back too.
you, I didn't hate this. For the study, want research from staff? Are you wanting us to try and dig up money and talk to city council for like a consultant? Are you okay with yeah, what do you want? When you say, where do you want this source to come from?
Let's just start, see what's already out there.
Yeah, see what
Nope.
staff can do.
Yeah.
Okay,
We can't be the only city that hates signs.
yeah, okay, that's,
And not that we hate signs. I get it. Signs are important, right? I get it, but we can't be the only city where
There's a
sign
concern, there's
companies
a
and
question.
businesses are pushing the limit and trying to
Yeah.
get bigger and bigger.
Absolutely.
just wanted to clarify how much on us do this versus someone else. So,
My suggestion would be start with seeing what's out there, and if it feels like there isn't sufficient, then it can't hurt to ask.
I did read in the news that the city council did not approve $33,000 for studying the ice rink, so I wonder if we can earmark that for signs. I'm joking, that's sarcasm. Let's not do that.
Kind of sarcasm. Just kidding. No,
It's
thank-
sarcastic unless this goes over well, in which case it's no longer sarcasm.
We don't have city business on here, but was there any city business that needed to be discussed?
Meeting, so there's just the meeting. Be in the new city hall, yeah, I'm
Oh,
excited.
Okay.
We are not meeting on the 23rd.
Did you hear that, Polo, Kenneth, and Lindsay? We do not have a meeting next week. Polo is typing though.
Did you say 28th? Yeah, 23rd. Yeah.
23rd, okay. Oh, yeah.
And the next meeting on the 23rd will be in the new
city.
temple. I mean, the new city building.
That's excellent, Polo. Okay, I mean, there's something to look into right there. Look into some Hawaiian legislation, see if we have something of value there. 23rd, I will be in St. George.
Lindsay, you're up on the 23rd if you're available. She's typing. She'll be there.
All right, thank you, Lindsay.
Right. Entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?